When we think of artificial intelligence, I believe the first company that comes in mind is Nvidia. And we can see year to date, the stock is up roughly 168%. There might be some semiconductor investors wondering why is AMD, Advanced Micro Devices, which kind of hits similar markets as Nvidia, why does it not get the same love? In today's episode, I want to explain why right now Nvidia is definitely the top player in this AI space and what can AMD do to kind of change things around? Let's take a closer look in today's episode. So, like I mentioned, when we think about artificial intelligence, especially for the semiconductor market, the big players out here are pretty much data centers, servers, high performance computing players. Those are the ones really baking in that money right now. These are the ones that are paying that money for that silicon, for that semiconductor product to help with artificial intelligence. Right now, like I mentioned, Nvidia did amazing earnings, up 25% up 25% on the day, right? That is insane. And year to date, the stock is up 166%. We can see AMD is no slacker, right? 86% year to date is really well. But if we remember when the company did report earnings, stock price actually fell a bit. So what is the disconnection here? And I also want to take a closer look at Intel, right? Intel year to date is unfortunately not it's pretty much just sleeping right now. It's only up roughly 2% year to date. And we can see this is a stock that's definitely not seeing the momentum of AI right now. And I think the first thing to understand is just the overall server shipment. So remember, when we think about AI and who's really spending the money is the owners of these huge data centers, being either in the cloud, being either on premise or some form of enterprise. Unfortunately, if we take a closer look at this research from TrendForce, they do mention that server shipments are expected to fall an estimated 2.85% year over year in 2023. So right now, everybody's like, "Hey, Jose, how can server shipments be expected to be down 3% year over year?" But then you have companies like Nvidia that are gaining so much revenue in the data center market. That doesn't make any sense, and that's where the big difference comes between all three players. So when we take a closer look at server shipments, we have heard from big people and even from Nvidia's earnings that Jensen Huang mentioned that world's $1 trillion data center is nearly populated entirely by CPUs today. They mentioned over the last 4 years, call it a $1 trillion worth of infrastructure installed. It's all been completely based on CPUs and dumb NICs. So it's basically unaccelerated. So obviously in the past few years, the ones that have benefited dramatically from this kind of data center growth and unaccelerated market have been companies like AMD and Intel. Unfortunately, now that we are seeing that this estimated total shipments is expected to see a bit of a decrease, the ones that are going to take the biggest hits are going to be Intel. We can see its revenues down 39% year over year. Intel's is seeing a bit of two major headwinds. The first headwind is that total addressable market contraction that we're seeing here from TrendForce. Intel kind of mentions the same thing. The second thing is competitive pressure. Intel does have that huge competitive pressure from the likes of AMD. And that's why when we take a closer look at AMD, their data center revenue is a little bit different compared to Intel. Intel's data center revenue was down 39% year over year. AMD's data center revenue was pretty much flat. The reason being, though, is even though they are seeing a contraction in the market of total server sales, they are taking market share from Intel, which is allowing them to kind of maintain at least some healthy momentum here in the data center market.
I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
Now, if we take a closer look at Nvidia's revenue has actually increased dramatically quarter over quarter and even year over year. So we see Intel losing in data center revenue, AMD is pretty much flat, Nvidia is up year over year. And what's the big difference? So, like I mentioned earlier, most of data centers and servers are pretty much CPU based. Now, there is this aspect called AI servers, and AI servers tend to have some form of accelerator being a GPU. So, this currently accounts based on TrendForce to a relatively small portion, less than 10% of total server shipments. So, this is why Nvidia, unlike other players, is growing their total revenue, right? Because, like we mentioned, the data center market has been mainly dominated by CPUs. Now we're seeing this kind of huge need of CPUs. So even though the overall total server is contracting, the overall server markets that include GPUs is increasing at a super fast rate. And that's why Nvidia gets to really benefit while some of the other players don't. Now, I do want to say this is why we even got an amazing outlook from Nvidia in the second quarter. They expect revenue to be roughly $11 billion. That is going to be the highest revenue this company has ever seen. They peaked in quarter one of fiscal year of 2023, which was roughly a year ago, and revenue there was $8.2 billion. So they're going to by a huge margin surpass their peak revenue levels. So I mentioned why the main reason Nvidia is the big winner here in the data center market, especially with this AI push. AMD does have some ability to gain market share. And this is why, if we take a closer look at year to date, AMD has definitely gone up a nice amount. First is they're taking market share from Intel in forms of CPU. The second thing is AMD also tends to have data center GPUs. So because they do have those data center GPUs, they're able to kind of ride that wave very similar to Nvidia. Luckily for Nvidia, Nvidia is by far the leader in market share here for data center GPU. So, I mean, even if you're number two in a market that's supply chain constrained, number two is it's an important place, right? Nvidia, in their most recent earnings, they did mention that right now they are working on building up that supply for this quarter, but have also procured a substantial amount of supply for the second half, as they are seeing huge amount of server demand for the GPU market. So Nvidia might not be able to meet up with this demand, and certain customers might be like, hey, I don't really have the time to wait for your products, Nvidia, so I'm gonna go to AMD instead, even though maybe their products might be a little bit weaker than yours at the moment. So that's why AMD is also kind of pulling right now. Fortunate for Nvidia, they do have a lot more than just GPUs, right? AMD, at the end of the day, they're pretty much just building these GPUs, and they're kind of selling it and selling it to OEMs like Dell, like HPE, and then they're kind of creating supercomputers from there. Nvidia does that, but they also have another aspect. Nvidia creates their own supercomputers, and they've mentioned that they got really good at doing this. For example, the Nvidia DGX SuperPods, these are powered by tons and tons of Nvidia products, and obviously other products as well, right? It's not just pure, for example, the DGX for the H100 system is using Intel's Sapphire Rapids. So it's not necessarily a pure Nvidia play, but they have kind of cut the middleman, and they have become very efficient at building these supercomputers. So maybe if I was a huge enterprise, I'm not going to go and try to talk to all these players to see what's the best route for me. I'm just going to call Nvidia real quick and be like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. What can you do for me? Nvidia will be like, hey, we can build out these supercomputers. We're super fast at doing it, while maybe some other supercomputer providers or builders might take a few months. We can do it in a faster turn rate, and we also have some of the best products out there. Outside of that, Nvidia also has their AI solutions and kind of their software market. Nvidia has become more of a software company, and it's really showing, right? That software. Outside of that, I didn't have it here, but Nvidia Mellanox, which is their end-to-end networking solutions. Networking is super important. So Nvidia has kind of created not just the hardware, but the infrastructure and also the software, especially in this AI market. And AMD is kind of in the right path. I do remember, let's take a closer look at their transcript. They did mention that AMD is creating their own AI team to really focus on the software space. So AMD definitely has the opportunity. Yet they mentioned here that their AI activities increased significantly in the first quarter, driven by expanded engagements with broad sets of data centers and embedded. And they expanded the software ecosystem support for their Instinct GPUs. They do mention that they have created a new AI group to kind of really focus on this AI end-to-end hardware. So AMD is definitely in the right path. And for those not familiar, my two biggest positions are Nvidia and AMD. Nvidia right now, thanks to these huge gains, is roughly 18% of my overall portfolio. AMD is, I want to say, maybe close to 10, 11%. Both are big positions. I'm super, super happy about them. So I just really want to showcase what were the main reasons that Nvidia is getting all this hype while AMD is only getting some of the hype, and I do believe it's rightfully so. AMD, like I mentioned, is heading in the right direction, but at the moment, Nvidia just provides so much easy solutions, and that's the thing. There's a lot less hurdles one has to cross if, hey, I just want to build a supercomputer. Let me just call Nvidia real quick, and they can go from beginning to end. Where maybe if I want to build a AMD supercomputer, it might take a lot longer. I might have to look at other software solutions as well, because at the moment, Nvidia is definitely dominating in that software infrastructure as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this quick video. Take care, have a good day, and see you next time.